Samsung's new quantum dot OLED TVs are stunning, but there's just a couple things that are holding them back. Let's review Samsung's QD OLED S95B, which is available in 55 and 65-inch configurations, and I'm testing out the former. Welcome everybody, welcome to Apple Insider. It is Andrew here, and as I said, I am testing out the 55-inch version of the Samsung QD S95B, which is Samsung's first OLED TVs. Now these are also quantum dot QD OLED TVs, which is kind of a big deal. And compared to some of the competition, these are even a little bit cheaper. I'm looking at you, Sony. So there's a lot to live up to. Samsung has so far resisted the urge to move into OLED sets, and these represent the first OLED sets that Samsung has produced, and because they're using quantum dot instead of standard OLEDs. Quantum dot aims to solve the two primary issues affecting OLED technology. The backlight is blue, and engineering choices relating to that reduces the number of layers the light passes through versus an all-liquid crystal display. Given the same area and the nature of the chemistry and physics, which I'm not going to get into, this allows for more emitters than any other color in the backlight given the same area, which increases the overall brightness and trueness of the color at off-center viewing angles. So again, those are the two big issues with OLED tech, is they are not as bright as typical TVs, and they can suffer from poor color saturation and trueness of colors, especially at off-center viewing angles. And that's where quantum dot comes in. A couple things to nail down. This is a 4K HDR television, and it does not support Dolby Vision. That's one of my bigger hangups with this set. Samsung just refuses to support Dolby Vision, and instead it's been embracing HDR10, and in this case it also supports HDR10+. There is not as much HDR10+ content out there in comparison to Dolby Vision, and typically speaking, Dolby Vision is a better standard, has a much more stricter set of specifications to go along with it and a higher certification, but you have to pay for that certification, and maybe Samsung just doesn't want to do that. But regardless, it does support HDR10+, which is supported in the new version of tvOS 16 on the latest Apple TV 4K. So that's at least one positive aspect when looking at the HDR capabilities. Also supports up to 120 Hz, and all of the HDMI that we're going to talk about support 120 Hz, which is great for gamers out there and anyone who wants to watch a bunch of sports on their QD OLED TV. So let's break down the ports on the Samsung S95B. There are a total of 4 HDMI ports. 2 of the HDMI ports, numbers 3 and 4, are located behind the right-hand side. They are bolstered by 2 USB-A ports there. One of those HDMI ports is the eARC port used for connecting a sound system. That's the audio return channel. So if you're using like a Sonos soundbar or another soundbar or other sound system, you can use that eARC port. Then the rest of the ports are located down, facing downward there. Those additional ports are 2 more HDMI ports, number 1 and number 2 if you're going off of their numbering system. Beyond that, there's a digital audio output, Ethernet jack, X-Link service port, and an antenna connector. All of these ports can be hidden behind a plastic panel that will cover them up, which gives a really nice backwards covering or appearance to the TV set. And there's cable management built in here thanks to that cover, so you can route those cables down and down the back and then cover everything up with those 2 plastic panels, which definitely improves the look of this TV from behind. So depending on where you have this placed in a room, you're not going to see just a bunch of ports and cables sticking back. It very much looks nice and seamless. The power cable is located on the right-hand side, and it too can be routed into a little groove and behind that back panel, feeding out just behind the base. Looking at the design of the TV, it's exceptionally slim. They say it's like this laser slim technology, which is supposed to be inspired by a laser. I don't know about any of that, but it is ridiculously thin, at least most of the set. Pretty much everywhere around it, it's crazy thin. If you try to pick this thing up, use 2 people. I was perpetually worried about corners or bending things, all sorts of stuff. It's just so thin. I was nervous the entire time that I had to move this. There is a thicker part towards the bottom where all the electronics are housed, the speakers are housed, all of that stuff. It's a bit thicker, but still notably thinner than a lot of TVs that are out there. This thing just has a very thin profile. Rather than two sets of feet on either side, there is one stand right in the center. It slopes out towards the back and then pops into the front, so it has nice good space in the front if you need to put a soundbar there. Just over 3 inches, I believe, of space to situate your soundbar. It holds the TV very well. I didn't test the 65-inch version, which is a little bit bigger, but at least on the 55, it was strong. It was reliable. There was a little bit of wiggle, but it settled quickly and just really did a good job of holding the TV in place. Especially for a smaller stand, like what I've got here in this video, it helps to have a central stand instead of the 2 feet on either side. One of my favorite aspects of this TV, it's kind of a small thing, is the remote. Samsung has put together a surprisingly good remote for this TV. There are all the usual buttons like your directional pad, the microphone button for voice controls, your home button, back button, play button, volume channel, all that kind of stuff. You also have your shortcut buttons there at the bottom to jump into streaming services. You can jump into Netflix, Samsung TV Plus, Prime Video, or Disney Plus. You won't ever have to deal with batteries with the Samsung remote because it can charge up over USB-C. So it's a rechargeable remote. But in something that's particularly unique is around the back, there's a solar panel. So you can go ahead and place this in the sunlight and charge up your remote that way. So you never have to even deal with plugging this thing in. This is brilliant, and it definitely took a little bit of time before I started remembering to put this in the sun, and I don't know how fast it charges, but I haven't had to worry about it. Just as long as this is kind of in any general sunlight, if it's in like a living room and you get some sunlight coming in, you're good to go. Just make sure you don't put it face down or face up. You gotta make sure that panel is facing upwards so it can absorb any light and keep that battery topped off. The Samsung S95B is running Tizen OS, which is Samsung's operating system that it uses for quite a few things. And it works well enough, but it definitely gave me issues. The TV crashed a couple times just during my testing. And during the setup process, it gave me an option to like skip certain steps, but there was no way to navigate to the skip button in the upper corners. And that just really frustrated me. There are other just little wiggly things that just didn't sit right with me as I was trying to use the operating system. It didn't feel super stable. Now, that's not to say Tizen OS is bad by any means. It's still a pretty solid operating system, and it has a ton of apps that you can download. Basically, all of your streaming apps are there, including Apple TV Plus. You can just stream the Apple TV Plus app right there on your Samsung TV. Beyond streaming apps, there's a bunch of gaming apps as well. You can jump into a bunch of different streaming game apps such as NVIDIA GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, Xbox Game Pass, Google Stadia, and you can pair a bunch of different controllers directly with your TV. You can pair your Sony PlayStation DualSense or DualShock 4 controllers, your Xbox controller, the Google Stadia controller, the Amazon Luna controller, the NVIDIA controller. There's a bunch. There's Logitech controllers out there, Perry controller, and game with all these streaming gaming services directly on your TV without any boxes necessary. So just another nice benefit to have baked in to this television. I've got to also talk about smart home tech here, right? I mean, that's one of my things that I'm very excited about. And there's good and bad with these new Samsung TVs. On the good side, there's a ton of stuff built in here. I mean, Samsung, of course, has its own SmartThings integrations, and it's very verbose. So you can see all of your different Samsung smart home appliances in there. We have a Samsung smart home washer and dryer, as well as a Samsung fridge, and we can get all of those alerts just showing up on the TV. It's pretty cool. So like I'm down here, the washer and dryer goes off and I see a notification slide over on the TV. Same thing for when the refrigerator door has been left open. So say I'm upstairs, I got myself some lunch, I go to close the fridge, I didn't close the door all the way, I come down here, I'm eating, I'm working, and then all of a sudden I get an alert on the TV saying the fridge door was left open. That's pretty sweet. It's a really nice integration. There's also support for things like Amazon's voice assistant, so you can just ask your TV to do stuff and control stuff with the TV. Very nice. But when it comes to Apple things, it's less nice. So there's no full HomeKit control here like with other smart TVs. Some other smart TVs will show in HomeKit, you can control it through the Home app, control it through your voice and Siri, and it's lovely. Samsung does not want to do this. They want to just push their smart home platform, SmartThings, instead. So there is no HomeKit support here. There is support for AirPlay, so you still can cast your audio and video up to the television, you just can't control the TV. So a lot of good here. I just wish it would have supported HomeKit. Samsung, please support HomeKit on future TVs. I know Samsung is supporting Matter with SmartThings, so maybe that's how we're going to backdoor this into HomeKit, but explicit HomeKit support would just be nice. Samsung is using a 2.2.2 60-watt surround sound in its S95B TV. It even says it supports Dolby Atmos, but saying it supports Atmos is a bit of a stretch. There's some cool stuff the TV is doing and kind of pinpointing location and stuff, and it does have above average audio for a television. But anyone who is spending this much money on TV is probably looking at other options for sound. I'm just being realistic. You're probably using a Sonos soundbar, some other soundbar, or a dedicated surround sound system. You just need to do it. It definitely sounds better than your run-of-the-mill TV, but I'd almost be happier if there was no speaker and just relied on an actual external surround sound system, because it's always going to sound better than trying to fit stuff into a TV. I mean, this thing is very thin. There's not a lot of space here. It's good sound, just not amazing sound for the television that you're buying. That brings me to the most important section of this video, the video quality. Again, it's a 4K TV with HDR10, HDR10 Plus support. I tested this with a number of different services, including streaming over Blu-rays. I streamed through video apps, a bunch of different video apps, live TV, all sorts of stuff with this television. And for the most part, I was incredibly impressed. OLED TVs have insane contrast ratio, basically infinity, because they're completely black when they're not in use, and this one can get even brighter than your typical OLED TVs because it's using quantum dot tech, so it's even brighter than a normal OLED would be, and it definitely pays off. As soon as I turned this thing on, I was very impressed with how bright it was, how good it looked, and how great the saturation of colors were, especially at off angles. Compared to the other OLED TVs in the house, this is definitely better. That's not to say it's perfect though. The two things that I noticed with video quality were sometimes I saw some raised blacks, specifically through streaming applications. So maybe they just didn't support that kind of level of deep black, and it was adjusting. We're going through streaming apps here, so it's not going to be perfect. But I did see some raised black levels. And then skin tones were not always 100%. Sometimes there was tinting going on, but if you tinker with the video modes, I think you'll find something that looks pretty incredible for what you prefer. Overall, this is a fantastic TV. I love almost everything about it. The speakers are good, the picture quality is amazing, and quantum dot tech definitely pays off over your typical OLED TVs. Still, I'd love if Samsung just played nicer with other people. Like, give me Dolby Vision and give me HomeKit support. I would love to see those additions here, and I can overlook the things like the small issues with the video quality and with the issues of Tizen OS. There's still a ton to love here, and if you guys are interested in this TV, I have links for it in the 65-inch version down below in the description. Let me know what you think over on Twitter at Andrew_OSU or in the comments. Otherwise, stay tuned. I got a lot more video coverage and reviews coming your way.